From ABC News, The Weekend Report, here's Tom Jarriel.
Good evening. The pendulum swung back today from Star Wars to spy wars between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. In Moscow, they retaliated for the U.S. expulsion of 25 Soviet diplomats from their post at the United Nations. They were sent home earlier suspected of intelligence gathering, spying. Today, the Soviets found 5 American diplomats and accused them of impermissible activities, spying, and sent them home. Details now from Walter Rogers.
Soviet leader Gorbachev spent much of this last week trying to put a positive face on his summit meeting in Iceland with President Reagan. And most American diplomats here had hoped Gorbachev would not retaliate for the U.S. expulsion of 25 Soviet diplomats accused of spying at the United Nations. Foreign Ministry spokesman Gennady Gerasimov tried to defuse the entire issue by saying the Soviet diplomats were coming home as part of their normal diplomatic rotation. But on a quiet Sunday afternoon, the Soviet Foreign Ministry summoned a representative of the American embassy here and handed him a list of 5 Americans in Moscow and Leningrad accused of impermissible activities. The task statement said the attention of the U.S. Embassy was again drawn to the fact of the continuing use of American diplomatic missions in the USSR for illegal activities against the Soviet Union, and the demand was made that the appropriate measures be taken for stopping them. Tonight, an announcer on Soviet television read the names of the Americans who have been declared persona non grata. By Mr. Gorbachev's standards, these expulsions were measured. When the British kicked out 31 Soviets accused of spying, Mr. Gorbachev expelled 31 British diplomats. In response to the U.S. expulsions, he only kicked out 5 Americans. Still, this is certain to mark a further downturn in superpower relations. Walter Rogers, ABC News, Moscow.
As each side keeps the scorecard over expelled diplomats, the bigger game of negotiating a limit to nuclear weapons goes on, the post-Reykjavik maneuvers. Today, U.S. officials were optimistic on that front while weighing their response to the expulsion of the American diplomats. Kenneth Walker reports.
White House Chief of Staff Donald Regan said the U.S. will study the expulsions before deciding how to respond, but that at the least, next spring, the U.S. expects that more Soviets at the UN mission will leave.
We want that in every 6 months, so many of them to come out. And we're going to pursue that one, in addition to whatever else we have to do as a result of this action.
But Soviet official Georgy Arbatov warned that any retaliation could escalate.
It can go down to 0 in both countries if you go on this way of retaliation after retaliation.
Despite the new trouble spot, Secretary of State George Shultz suggested the Soviets have privately signaled more flexibility on their public demand that Star Wars research be limited to the laboratory.
If they have further ideas, and there have been suggestions that they may, there is a good place for them to put them down on the table in Geneva.
Chief U.S. Arms Negotiator Max Kampelman on This Week with David Brinkley offered the most optimistic American assessment yet when he suggested the two sides may not be far apart on some deal over the arms proposals that failed at Reykjavik.
We are prepared to talk days or weeks, and I doubt very much that it need go beyond that. I will make a distinction between a breakthrough in principle and the hard, tough work of writing a treaty, which could take months.
Even if progress is made when the arms talks resume in Geneva this week, irritants like the expulsion of diplomats continue to threaten an already strained U.S.-Soviet relationship. Kenneth Walker, ABC News, the White House.
European allies, members of NATO's nuclear planning group, began meetings on Tuesday to discuss nuclear weapons strategy in the wake of the Reykjavik talks. They're looking for new guidelines for either the further deployment of nuclear weapons in Europe or their total withdrawal. Both possibilities were raised in the talks in Iceland. Tomorrow, the government of Israel will change hands with a new prime minister and cabinet, although there hasn't been an election there since 1984. It's part of the unusual deal drawn up by Israel's 2 major parties 2 years ago, as Jean Meserve reports.
Labor Prime Minister Shimon Peres will do something tomorrow that has never been done before. He will voluntarily, without elections, give his job to his political rival, Yitzhak Shamir of Likud. The handoff was one of the terms of the coalition agreement drawn up by Labor and Likud 2 years ago, when neither one was able to win enough votes in the Knesset to form a government. During the Peres term, the National Unity Government has not only hung together, it has become very popular, principally because of its economic policies, which brought under control an unbridled inflation rate.
63% think the government has been successful. This is the highest in the last decade, again, for any government.
Though some analysts believe this level of public support will force Labor and Likud to keep working together, Shamir's term has not had an auspicious beginning. Inter-party squabbling has held up his swearing in for a week. Jean Meserve, ABC News, Tel Aviv.
The captured American who goes on trial tomorrow in Nicaragua, Eugene Hassenfuss, said in an interview today that he believes he was working for the U.S. government. The American, whose plane was shot down earlier this month while on a gun-running mission for the anti-Sandinista Contras, was interviewed by CBS in a prison in Managua as Sandinista officials looked on. A debate is raging in Paris over whether comebacks are possible for the miniskirt and high-heel shoes for men, as designers unveil their latest fashions. But in addition to the hemline controversy, a new theme has been introduced at the fall fashion shows in the City of Lights: fear of terrorism. Hillary Balker has details.
It may be October for everybody else, but the fashion moguls have made it springtime in Paris. The season isn't the only break with reality. Some of the clothes are literally right out of this world. But strange clothes, even the new look for mother and child, aren't what's really different about this year's ready-to-wear shows. What is different is this: security. And it's on everyone's mind. Last month's bomb attacks have taken their toll even here.
There are not only less people, there are less photographers. It's really incredibly empty compared to other years.
One reason there are fewer people is that fewer people are allowed in. There's a strict screening procedure. Invitations and ID are a must. And it doesn't end there. The security guards make sure that nothing gets past the entrance that shouldn't.
Well, knowing that there's probably going to be much better security, that, just reassured everyone to go ahead and take the chance to come on. Of course, if, we're from New York and anything can happen there.
But some designers simply decided to give their shows at home. And for the faint of heart, home is perhaps the best place for some of the more revealing creations. But there was a good deal of humor as well as sex appeal, a combination guaranteed to win over the hardest to please, let alone man's best friend. Hillary Balker, ABC News, Paris.
The first U.S. gold coins to be produced in more than 50 years will go on sale tomorrow. The new coins by the U.S. Mint will come in 4 sizes and will be known as Eagles. They'll sell at coin dealers, banks, and brokerages for the value of the gold in them, from $5 to $50. To the big league baseball players, there's no finer season than the fall, the time for the league championships and the World Series. In the series this year, with the New York Mets battling the Boston Red Sox, one of the boys of summer has reached the autumn of his career, hoping for one more season. Ron Claiborne reports.
Curveball. When Tom Seaver came to the Boston Red Sox in a mid-season trade, he was hoping to help the Sox win their first pennant in more than a decade. Well, the Red Sox made it to the World Series, but Seaver didn't. He's been unable to play because of a knee injury. Still, he says he's excited about being here, especially against his former team, the Mets.
The biggest thing is being able to get back to a World Series, and it's always, it's a great time of year, and it's a great show. It's always nice to come back home, and I had a very nice hand from the fans here last night, and they appreciated what I did here for over 10 years, and some of those memories are still here, and I think they'll be here for a long time, and it's nice to know that those things are appreciated.
What Mets fans remember are Tom Terrific's 198 victories, 3 Cy Young Awards for being the league's best pitcher, and 2 World Series. George Thomas Seaver is 41 now, and at the end of a great career that produced more than 300 wins. Although he can't play in this World Series, he's helping out by counseling young Red Sox players like Roger Clemens.
And what I try to do is contribute what I can contribute, as opposed to, moaning and griping or whatever about not being able to pitch.
After the series is over, Seaver will undergo arthroscopic surgery on his knee and decide whether to try to play baseball one more year.
So here at Shea Stadium is where it began for Tom Seaver and where it may end. But regardless, the future Hall of Famer's place in baseball history is assured. Ron Claiborne, ABC News, New York.
And that's our report for tonight. Steve Bell and Kathleen Sullivan will have tomorrow's first news on World News This Morning, followed by Good Morning America. I'm Tom Jarriel for ABC News. Good night.
From Washington, this has been the Weekend Report. The Weekend Report is a presentation of ABC News.